Lorenzo here with Heli Direct. I hope everybody is having a good start to the year 2025. In today's video, I wanted to make it a little bit more informational. We are going to talk about what machine size is good for you. And that's what we're going to be covering today. I just want to make sure that you guys go to the field and just have a good time, go back home with the biggest smile, and what machine size is going to do that for you. In front of me, I have a different variety of machines. I have the Goose Guy S1 that I'm going to be using for reference, the Goose Guy S2, Raw 420, Tron 5.5, and the XL 700. Now, these are all different size machines, as you can tell. Starting from the smallest, which we'll be working from first, the S1, all the way up to 700 class helicopters. Now, I want to talk to you guys about what you can expect from them as far as feel goes, where you could fly them at, what battery size they use, and yeah, let's get into them. So, like I said, we're gonna start off with the smallest of the table, the Goose Guy S1. You guys can take a look at that, how small that is. Tiny, tiny, tiny. Now, I recommend this size for beginner pilots up to advanced 3D pilots if you want as well. But really for beginner, intermediate pilots, the reason I recommend them is because they're very tiny, very inexpensive as well to purchase and replace parts on them. Now, the things that you could feel when you fly a machine like this, of course, it's not going to be as stable as when you move up the chain of helicopters, but they're pretty stable for their size. Actually, I will say that they're very light. They don't bite as hard as you would think. They're very, very stable. Actually, I will say that a lot of people comment that, man, they're not stable at all, they're just all over the place, and that's more likely the 3D pilots that just freaking send them to the moon and all that. but these things are very, very tameable. I mean, they seriously, you could fly them with ease. The reason I say that I recommend these for beginner, more likely beginner and intermediate, is because you have more choice to fly them. As far as like where to fly them, you can fly them in living rooms, basements, front yards, backyards, with no issues at all. You don't have to worry about smacking something right off the gate, And so that's the reason why I recommend one of these to beginners and intermediates, because they're very inexpensive. When you purchase a size like this, relatively most of the machines that are out on the market right now that are this size, they come built like this. They come exactly out of the box like this, and you don't have to worry about building one. They come with a battery normally, and it's just good for anybody that's starting off, getting back into the hobby. If you want to learn your orientations again, or learn them for the first time, I really recommend one of these to start off. Or if you're a sim pilot that feels that they're comfortable enough to try in real life and feel real life gravity, winds and stuff, you could try it with one of these, crash it, and I promise you, take my word for it, I've crashed these many times, and they're not going to break on the first go around. I promise you. I mean, I've crashed this machine in particular so many times, and I'm still using the stock spindles, stock main shaft, and everything, and I've had no issues. So this is the Goose Guy S1. As you can see, very tiny, and yeah, I recommend these for beginner pilots and intermediates. And if you're a high-level 3D pilot, don't get them twisted. They move, these little guys. This size can move too. Another thing that I want to talk to you guys before I move on to the next size is the battery size. These use this size. Normally, the other companies that are out there that make this size use a 2S, like a normal 2S battery, and it's super inexpensive to purchase. You could buy tons of these, go out to your local park, front yard, living room, especially now in times where we are, it's winter where I live, so I really can't get out much to go fly. You could just plug one of these up, go in the living room, basement, and have a good time. And these batteries, super small, easy to charge, you won't have any issues. So that's why I say that they're very good for beginners or somebody that wants to get back into the hobby. I would start off with something like this size right here. Now, let's move on to its bigger brother that I'm going to be using for reference. This is, I believe, a 280 size helicopter. Don't fact check me on that, I always forget the size, but I want to say this is a 280 size helicopter. Out of the two from the smaller brother, I prefer this one. It's a little bit more floatier, so when you do take off, you're not gonna have to play with the collective as much. It's a lot more stable, and they're very, very good as well as power goes. They have plenty of power. Most of the companies that are out now that are making helis this size, they make them with tons of power. So if you want to have some, really give it some behind it, you can. Don't worry about that. And they're very, very tameable, guys. I mean, they're just fun machines to fly this size. I really do like them. You can fly them in. I have flown them in high winds, and I have had no issues. Of course, they're not going to be as controllable as like a big machine, because the light, they're very light. They don't weigh much. In high winds, they're flyable pretty good. But yeah, I would recommend flying these in a front yard, backyard type space, because that's where it's more open and stuff. I wouldn't recommend flying these in the living room. If you're Tarek outside and you can control them pretty good and you're pretty comfortable, I guess, but make sure you have a spacious living room. Don't do any 3D, maybe just hover it, check it out. Maybe if you just fixed it and you just want to do a quick hover, you can. But if you really want to fly it around and enjoy it, go outside, take it outside. And yeah, I love this type of size, guys. I really do. They're super fun, a lot more visible than the smaller guy, in terms of where you're actually flying it around and you won't get confused with your orientation as much. That is this size. This is the S2 that I have. I've crashed it plenty of times, and they take a beating. So I really recommend these to as well as beginners, intermediates, and high-level 3D pilots. And yeah, that's the 280 size. Now we're gonna move up to the 380/420 range. Now, I know what you guys are probably thinking. Well, Jer, I mean, that's kind of a significant jump from the 280 to 380s and 420s. That's kind of like a big jump. Should I maybe try something in between and stuff? I personally feel that if you're pretty comfortable with the 280 and you can fly it around with the gyro off and everything, the self-leveling thing activated, I feel like you can move on to that 380/420 size, like this one right here. These are a lot more stable, and they're gonna be a lot more forgiving now, because when you hover them and everything, you can really tell how locked in they are as far as hovers, or when you're doing normal forward fly or orientations, whatever you want to practice. And these things are very good in 3D as well. So if you're a good 3D guy as well, don't be scared to get into one of these things, man. These things are awesome as well. But if you're really looking to start maybe moving up from the smaller helis, I really recommend these. I really don't see why you should be afraid to get into these sizes. And that's really what I gotta say about these. I mean, they're not scary at all, guys. They're very quiet as well. all the manufacturers that are out right now, they're making the machines as far as this size goes super quiet. The power is very smooth as well, and don't be scared because you're gonna have plenty of power as well. You're gonna get plenty of power when you want to maybe push them a little more. And one thing to mention that I really want to bring up is that when you get into this type of size helicopter, 380 to 420, they're not going to come like this. They're not going to come like this. You have to build them. They come as kits. And so what does that mean? That means that you have to manually build them. The head is not going to come assembled. Frames, none of that is going to come assembled. But please don't let that scare you to getting your hands on one of these sizes, because manufacturers make them super simple to read, super simple to maintenance, build them. They make them super simple. There's not that much to them. You have your normal swash and head just like you do on your little guys, and you have a direct drive motor on normally these type. I know the Raw 420 competition has a normal motor, your traditional motor, but normally these types of helis come with a direct drive motor just like your little guys. The only thing that changes now is we have a fourth servo going to the tail, compared to where these are older tail driven not servos, motor driven tails. With these ones you have a fully functioning tail mechanism, so that means that you have a servo controlling your pitch, you have a full tail case. These are belt driven, so under here you have a tail pulley. Under your motor you have a tail pulley going to the back. There's a belt going through the boom all the way to the back of the tail, and that's going to allow it to be a lot more smoother and hold a lot better under loads, especially when you really want to push them. The tail is going to be more locked in, even better performance out of them, and the tail is going to be a lot more stable as well. When you really, if you could tune it out pretty good during normal flights and stuff like that, that tail will be very linear. You're not going to have any, bouncing or anything like that. None of that's going to happen with one of these. As far as where to fly these go, please don't fly these in your backyard, your front yard or anything like that, unless you have a 1 acre front yard. That's different. But normally, like me, where I live, I just have a normal front yard, not super big. I would recommend taking one of these out to like a park, somewhere that has enough space for you to practice, maybe move around the helicopter, not a lot of people around or cars. And yeah, that's why I would recommend flying something like this size, really somewhere where you can really be comfortable and not have to worry about smacking something, Another good thing about these is that they fly on 6S LiPo battery. Compared to a Blue Sky S2 or your normal S2s, they usually fly, the 280s, they usually fly on a 3S. We're bumping up to a 6S now, which means we're going to have more power. We can get more power out of the system, and we're going to have an even better flight time. If you're flying at a lower RPM, I don't see why you should be getting anything lower than 4+ minutes. You can get easily 4.5 minutes out of these things I'm flying a 2200 on my 420, and it works just perfect. You can fly the 380s through 420. The 380s usually run off the 1800s, whereas the 420s usually run off of 2200s through 2600 milliamp batteries. But yeah, I don't see why you should be getting anything under 4.5 minutes if you're flying at a lower RPM. If you're flying higher, then of course your flight time is gonna go down significantly. But yeah, these, if you're comfortable with the 280s, I don't see why you should be scared of moving up to a 380/420 helicopter. I really don't. And yeah, that's what I love about the 420/380 size, and why you should feel comfortable enough to bump up from a 280 up to a 420. So yeah, let's move on to the next. So now we're gonna bump up to the Mini 700. That's what I like to call them, because these are 550 size helicopters. Now, the 550 size helicopters are much more stable than your 380 slash 500, not 500, your 380 slash 420 helicopters. They're significantly more stable. Now we're running a traditional motor, as you would in a normal 700 and everything. We're going to be running a traditional motor, your traditional mechanisms and everything, tail servos, cyclic servos, your normal thing, your normal tail mechanisms. But now we're using a bigger battery. We're going to be using from a 4,000 up to a 6,000 milliamp battery. And you're going to get tons of power out of these. You can really push these to the extreme. I would recommend these for, you know, as well as more advanced heli guys. If you can make the jump from your 420, 380, 420 up to 550, if you're really comfortable enough, I really don't see why you should not be able to make that jump from this size to this size. If you're comfortable and you can fly this around, you can make the jump to one of these. I made the jump, and the feeling that I got when I first made that jump, it flew like I was flying a 700, but I wasn't. The reason I like this so much is because it's super stable. Now, what was that? It's super stable, and it's very nimble. When you roll it, and when you're flying in it and everything, it's super stable. You really do feel the difference. I felt the difference tremendously from this size to this size. I really did feel the difference. It's a little bit more expensive now from this size. We're looking at, you know, more expensive blades depending on which ones you use. Booms are a little bit bigger now, longer parts, the head is bigger, things like that. And you know, the units that you use and stuff like that, it's a little bit more expensive, but it's an awesome feeling. 550s, I love them. You can fly them in a very open place. I really wouldn't recommend them like flying in it like a small park. I would try to go to a more spacious area as well, because they do move around. They use their space very good, I will say. But if you're more advanced, you know, just be careful flying in like a smaller park or something like that. But yeah, they're easy to maintain as well. This is a kit. I think a lot of us know that. But to the viewers at home, these do come as kits as well. And yeah, I mean, they're just awesome machines. I don't see why you couldn't make the jump from this to this. It's a very, if you go up the chain of helicopters like I've been showing you, you should be able to get your hands on one of these and fly it with no problem at all. That's what you can expect from these, and that's why I also love 550s a lot. Let's move on to the next helicopter. So now we're going to talk about the biggest on the table, the 700 class helicopters. Now let's move this one a little bit to get some more space for this guy. And then we'll move this one as well. So now, let's slide this one over. We're going to talk about the 700 class helicopter. Why it's the most favorited out of most helicopter pilots out there now. And this is personally my favorite. I mean, you can see the wall. I love my 700s. They're the coolest ones to fly. I mean, there's no other feeling like starting off flying your first 700. I mean, when you fly your first 700, I remember mine. It's truly a unique feeling flying one of these. You don't get that feeling out of any other size helicopter. Flying a 700, it's just so heartwarming and such an addictive feeling. And yeah, I mean, I truly love this size the most. It's my favorite. You normally fly these on a 12S setup. Nowadays, manufacturers make light helicopters that you can fly them from 6, 7, 8S, all the way up to 12. But today we're going to talk about our standard size, normal head, traditional 700s. They normally fly on 12S, and 700 class helicopters are for more experienced pilots. Please don't grab one of these helicopters when you're coming back into the hobby. It's going to be dangerous for you, and I wouldn't, please don't do it. Just please don't do it. Get some experience and really practice before you put your hands on one of these, because they're very, very big in the air. The propellers, we're talking about 700 millimeter propellers now. And yeah, the parts on 700s, practically all of them now are constructed very, very good. I mean, there's no bad 700 out there in the market right now. They're all good, they all work very, very good. And with 700s, they're a lot more stable than your 550. They're a lot more stable. You really do feel it. You can flip them and they tend to hold their position like right there. You can just flip them and they'll stay right there. As where like a smaller heli, they flip them, they'll kind of just drift down. The 700s, man, you put that thing right where you want it and it'll stay. When you move up from the 550, let's say you're not even a 3D pilot, you just kind of want to fly the 700, you're comfortable enough to do it, man, you'll love it on the first flight, because when you take it off, it'll just hold its position like rock solid. Won't drift, it won't move. They're very, very, very good in high winds as well. Of course, winds mess up a lot of pilots as well. I'm one, but as far as the machine holding in the wind, it'll hold very, very good in some winds. I would recommend flying one of these in a more spacious area. Don't take these in a park or anything like that. I mean, please fly these in a designated, flying area for, that has some good space in it. And yeah, so the 700s are truly my favorite. They're the most stable out of the whole table that we talked about. If you, like I said, I started off on the Nano S2 and I worked up the chain, and now, I mean, I fly, my favorite size helicopters are 700s. You have to start somewhere, and the 700s are truly a unique helicopter size. I mean, they're the best to fly, in my opinion. Once you get into them, it's hard for you to stop. There's so many out there now. I mean, there's so many different brands, as you can see behind me. There's different makes and models of them. You can really, they're so open to what you can put into them as well. I mean, you can go from smaller motors, bigger, like more high power motors, and servos, ESCs. You can go very low up to down to 130 amp, all the way up to a 260, 300 amp ESCs. And yeah, I mean, 700s, I really recommend them if you have experience. If you have experience, I would really recommend getting a 700. There's no other feeling like it. They turn heads when they fly. I mean, they're just awesome. So that is what I recommend, guys. Please, if you guys have any questions at all, leave them in the comments. If you have any questions about what we talked about today as far as sizes go, I know I missed some sizes. There's like the 230s, I know the Blade 150, things like that. Don't be scared to leave them in the comments. Ask me any questions. I'll try to reach out back to you guys as much as possible. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it helped you out a little bit on picking your first model as far as, your skill level and where you're at. And I hope this video helped. So guys, subscribe. Don't be scared to leave a comment, and have an awesome day. Peace.
Heli direct!